Good morning, everyone. The Baker Fairburn Hockey Show is live here on Thursday, October 16th, 2025, following the Sabres 8-4 doubling of the Ottawa Senators Wednesday night down at KeyBank Center. I'm your host, Kris Baker, here as always with your Sabres beat writer from The Athletic, Matthew Fairburn. You can find all of Matthew's work at theathletic.com/Sabres. And Sabres finally got another win last night, Matthew. Pretty interesting game flow, I guess. You know, if you look at things and just kind of step out of the result for a minute, Sabres kind of had a very weak first period. They exploded in the second period. Third period wasn't exactly their greatest effort, but they did pot a few goals. So let's just kind of do the rundown real quick on how they got to that 8-4 victory. Jack Quinn, Jason Zucker, Ryan McLeod, each with a pair of goals. Alex Tuck with a goal and an assist. Yuri Kulich adds an empty netter. Notable effort from Zack Benson, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, with 4 assists. And Josh Doan continued his nice start to his Sabres career with 3 assists. Alex Lyon stops 32 of 36 to get his first victory in a Buffalo Sabres uniform. So again, this is another morning edition of the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show. If you're watching on YouTube on your way in, hit that like button on the video, subscribe to the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel, hit that notification bell so you know when Matthew and I go live. You can find the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you could, please leave a 5-star review. That's a tougher one early in the morning, Matthew. I was running out of breath there. But let's talk about the game.
Warms you up there with that quick intro.
Gets the lips moving, baby. Gets the lips moving. So, sat down to watch the game last night. We didn't kind of know what was going to happen with Yuri Kulich entering the lineup. I had some concerns that Lindy was going to outright just not play him, which would have been a catastrophic error, I think, for Lindy Ruff. So glad to see that he came to his senses and alerted you as such in his morning briefing. But to me, before I throw it to you, I'm just going to say, like, this was kind of what we talked about when we got together on Tuesday morning. It was like, this team really missed Zack Benson through the first 3 games. And I think it kind of showed last night. Agree or disagree?
100% agree. And it probably is a good place to start off generally with Benson and the injuries, right? Because I think there's a couple points to make about the injuries. We said that Benson was probably the guy they were missing the most out of the group, and I think that showed up last night in a key way. I mean, you could sum it up in one word: energy, right? And
I was going to say effort, but yeah, one of them.
The team played with energy and passion, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they did so with Benson in the lineup. I don't think you come out of this game saying, wow, all the Sabres need to do is get healthy, right? I don't think even Lindy Ruff would go that far, because he did mention, right, that they've been banged up after the game. He's like, when he was talking about how badly they needed a win, he's like, we have been banged up, but we also can't make excuses. Like, we didn't earn enough in those first few games. We didn't deserve enough. We didn't fight enough. The exact quote from him was, you still have to fight your way through the tough parts of the season. Our fight wasn't good enough in the first 3 games. I don't care whether we're hurt or not. We didn't earn enough. We didn't deserve enough. We didn't fight enough. And I thought tonight we fought for everything we got. And Zack Benson is the type of player who fights for everything he gets. He plays, but he's also not just, I think he gets mistaken for just an effort guy at times too. But last night and during the preseason, I am seeing the next level of playmaking from him. The game is slowing down a little bit for Zack Benson. He is making passes, making plays that are next level, that will get his offensive production to where everybody wants it to be. We did a wraparound all 32 bold predictions in The Athletic, and I filed it, I think, an hour before he got hurt at practice. But my one bold prediction for the Sabres was 60 points for Zack Benson. Of course, he gets hurt, and I'm thinking, what did I do here? But last night I'm thinking I undersold him a little bit. Like, I think 60 is going to be an interesting number to track. It felt a little bold when I made it, but it feels realistic at the same time with the role that he's getting. He's got made a great play shorthanded. Like, he's getting extra ice time. He has fully earned Lindy Ruff's trust. And I just see a bit more quickness. He's stronger. And the playmaking, like I mentioned, they all seem to have taken a step. And the energy, the tenacity, the smarts, none of that went anywhere, right? This is all baked into his game. Everything else is starting to come. And so it's one night, and it wasn't perfect for him, but he made a huge difference to a team that started playing with energy and a little bit of fire, and they were having fun. And isn't that just Zack Benson? Like, this guy just loves playing. He's out there every night bringing it. And it was notable to me too that the crowd was really into it. Not a large crowd, just under 14,000, but they got into it on Ottawa's second goal when there was the scramble around the net and the refs reviewed it, and they're booing the refs. They're going nuts. They're booing the refs after the challenge. And then that shorthanded goal that Zack Benson set up with a great pass, the place went nuts. And maybe it's just because it's been so quiet in there and been so angsty in there the first couple of games, but it was like, man, that's quite the pop for 14,000 people. And I think the players noticed it and fed off of it, and they got into that scrum with the Senators. All people want, anybody who's listening to this, anybody who was in the building last night, all they want is a team that plays, frankly, the way Zack Benson plays. So good call out by you. Good place to start, because I think he is the straw that stirs the drink in a lot of ways.
No, I think he is. Definitely showed last night. I think you just kind of captured it succinctly there. His impact on the lineup, his impact on the crowd. We'll see if they can carry that over on your 60-point prediction. I think he kind of made up for missing the first 3 games. He's now on pace for 316 after the 4 assist effort last night. I think that's
he's a point
good
per game. Even if you like, if he had gone pointless in the first 3, it's like, all right, he's a point per game now, on an 82 game. So yeah, it's pretty, that was a good start for him. If he gets some special teams time, it's like 60 points he is a playmaker, man.
It's kind of interesting. Lindy could have named probably 10 or 12 players in his pregame availability in the morning. And I think it was in response actually to a question that you asked. But he named some players specifically that he had to pull aside and have a one-on-one talk with, because it really, again, the question coming into the game was he going to scratch Yuri Kulich? It looked like that was possible on Wednesday. I'm sorry, at Tuesday at practice. With some uncertainty, right? But then in the morning of, I think you were asking him about other players, or, like, how do you pick your spots? I think was how you framed the question of when to pull a guy out or when to talk to him. But he mentioned specifically, he didn't mention Jack Quinn. He could have easily, but he mentioned Ryan McLeod, Jason Zucker, Alex Tuck as guys that he needed maybe to get more out of. And those guys came and showed up last night. I thought that was kind of interesting. The guys that he named specifically in the press in the morning of, I'm not sure they were listening, but I'm sure whatever message that he had wanted to give to them in their one-on-ones or whenever he was pulling them aside, seemed like it sunk in. Those guys showed up. But I don't want to sit here and say that the game last night was just all peachy. They came out in the first period. They had 3 shots on goal. They only had 4 shots on goal in the third period. Again, they really rode the momentum of a strong middle period. And we talked on Tuesday about the Sabres' best players needing to be their best players to get them out of this. And what did you see from the Sabres' best players? Like, we know, the middle of the pack kind of showed up. We just named a couple of those guys. But what about Thompson? What about Dahlin? What did you see from them last night in this 8-4 win? It's easy to look at the result and say, oh man, Tage and Rasmus must have had excellent games last night, but I'm not sure that was the case.
No, I didn't think in particular, Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin weren't the Sabres' best players last night. Tage Thompson in particular had some ugly numbers at 5-on-5. He was on the ice for 3 goals against, not on the ice for a single goal for at 5-on-5. Scoring chances were 11-1 in favor of the Senators when he was out there. High danger chances were 6-0. So he was not a major contributing factor to this game, not in a positive way anyways. And remember, this is a Senators team that was without Brady Tkachuk and playing a backup goalie who did not have a stellar night. Rasmus Dahlin, Sabres were outscored 2-0 with him on the ice at 5-on-5, outchanced 12-4. High danger chances were 6-2. Dahlin did pick up, a
2
point,
assists, I think.
a couple points. Yeah. So he was a bit better than Thompson, but that top group seemed to have a little bit of trouble. I thought Alex Tuck played well, got the goal at the net front. His
Mhm.
energy, was notably better. And we'll get into Alex probably a little bit more in his situation, the contract, everything else. I know he's kind of a focal point for the fan base in a lot of ways. I spoke to him yesterday for a story that'll probably run either later today or early tomorrow morning. But his energy has an impact on the rest of the group, on and off the ice. And I thought, the look on his face when he scored the goal, and you could see him kind of in between whistles over at the bench, like they need that. And I give this team credit. Like, we could definitely poke holes in what happened last night, and they could turn around and lay an egg on Saturday and rattle off a couple more losses. Like, it doesn't change a lot of what we talked about on Tuesday. But what I give the players credit for, because a lot of what we talked about on Tuesday wasn't necessarily directed specifically at the players, right? Like, they're in a tough situation where when they lose 3 games out of the gate, it's different than if almost any other team in the league loses 3 games out of the gate
Yeah.
because of the context that they have a hand in, but it's not entirely on them. And they undoubtedly feel the weight of that. Now, Jason Zucker is a master of the post-game press availability of just diffusing everything and he's like, in the room, it wasn't as big a deal as it was to everybody outside. We were keeping it level-headed, and I'm like, I don't know if that's totally the case based on the
On the
way.
outside, it's 3 games in 14 years, Jason.
Well, I also don't know if it's totally true what he says, because
Yeah.
Tage and Dahlin were pretty frustrated after the game the other night. Now, were they able to snap out of that the day after? Maybe. But I think Zucker has a way of speaking that diffuses things. Think about after the Devils game where he was like, "Oh, we didn't see it." He was able to kind of deflect away. And after the opening night loss, he was funny and kind of disarming. But there's no doubt that these guys were starting to feel some of that weight. If they go to 0-4, the weight would have just got heavier and heavier. And they allowed that goal that made it 2-1. Lindy challenged, which I thought was a desperate and careless challenge
Yes.
for goalie interference. And you're sitting there thinking, oh boy, it's 2-1. Now they have to kill a penalty. This could get away from them. And they score a shorthanded goal, get the crowd into it, start to run away with it. Early in the third period, they let up 2 goals in the first 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Their lead goes from 5-2 to 5-4. On the flip side, for Lindy, calls a great timeout. Well
Yep.
timed, gets everybody settled down, and they score 2 quick goals coming out of that, and they pull away. So 2 moments where they could have, if they played to the narrative, if they played to what everybody on the outside thinks of them, they would have fallen apart, but they didn't. And I give them some credit for that. It's got to be more than a one night thing, of course, but there were some encouraging signs that they really loosened up as a group, had some fun, played fast, loose, and they let up some chances as a result, and the game was a lot more entertaining than some of the ones they've played early in the season. But a good response from them, a needed response, because they couldn't go to 0-4.
No, they couldn't go to 0-4. They needed to play free. We talked about this on Tuesday. Body language, watching those dynamics on the ice, off the ice, on the bench, and so on. I thought that it was a better effort, but let's not kid ourselves. That start to the game was not good. The face-offs are not good. I don't want to focus on the bad. I think the team should be happy to get the win, but they do need to get off to a better start. I think it's going to be very rare. It's going to be a rare event in the league this year that they're going to have 2 bad periods, statistically anyways, and not get a lot of scoring chances, not get a lot of shots, get out chanced, and come away with a victory like they did last night. But I appreciate you calling out the improvement in the attitude, the energy. It was visible. They need to get the crowd in the game when they're at home. They need to get off to better starts, so I can't get off that in my mind. 3 shots on goal. I think all of them were on the power play last night in the first period. But that's part of that fight that they had to do within the game to get it back on track, come out in the second period, do their thing. Couple notable performances from last night. I think there's 2 players that we should talk about. One that I want to go to, and one that maybe
One quick
you don't
point
know.
before
Go
you
ahead.
jump to those players. You texted me in the second period last night, are they going to feel like they accomplished something? Like this 6-5, loss is gonna really be a kick.
I did. I said it's going to be a kick in the nuts when they lose 6-5.
And they scored those first 2 goals, and I was like, in the third period, the Senators did, and I was like, oh boy, like you might have nailed this. But yeah, go ahead with those other 2 players, because I think just like in the course of a game where you're like, are they going to feel like they accomplished something? Are they going to wake up? Are they going to get to practice on Friday feeling like they accomplished something? Or are they going to start to stack these efforts together?
No, it was good. It was a good response for them to keep fighting, even after that bad start to the third, to your point. I'm happy for Sabres fans to get that win. I'm happy, for a day that they can just kind of let their hair down a little bit. But my point is that, to your point, can't rest on your laurels with that win, because I think it was kind of an anomaly in the grand scheme of things. But 2 players that I think that we need to call out. One is more just a statistical note, and I'll start there. Owen Power. 4 hits last night recorded from Owen Power. This is a player that has taken a beating from fans a lot, sometimes from you and I, about using his body more. Did he wake up when he took a little jab in the face from Giroux?
He did
in that scrum at center ice
there
along the boards.
A little bit more of it was one of the first times. I'm trying to remember the exact moment, but you mentioning Power, he slipped my mind in the post-game column I wrote, but I'm glad you mentioned that, because there was a moment, I can't remember the exact spot in the game, that it was like the first time I can remember seeing his initial reaction after the whistle to be to go after a guy. Like not waiting until he gets shoved to like half-heartedly shove back. Like the whistle blew, someone was in there, and he was like mad. And I was like, okay, this guy is capable of getting mad and playing a little bit that way. Look, nobody is expecting him to evolve into Chris Pronger overnight, but if he can play a little bit pissed off, I think that would be a nice development. I think you don't want him to really play that way all the time, because it's not his game, and part of what makes him great is his poise with the puck. But when he doesn't have it, if he's got a little bit of fire, that'd be a good thing for this team. And let's not forget, first few games he was coming off an illness and coming off an injury late in camp, and he's coming off the injury in general in the summer that impacted him a little bit. So we'll see if he gets going. But yeah, good call out by you, because that slipped my mind.
Something that was interesting, I think it's something to watch, if there's this progression where, and I don't even know how else to say it, physicality. I was going to say, like, watching his balls drop, right?
Yeah.
In that physicality department this year would be a monumental event for this blue line as they come together. And as you have big guy Mertka in the pipeline, is going to come up and he's going to bring that game, I don't want to go too far down the line in 2 years and say, wow, this could be something on the blue line, but Power playing that way because of the minutes that he commands with his skill set, adding just a little bit of that could go a long way for the team. So I thought
And
that was interesting.
Kesselring is not even there next to him yet. So,
Yeah,
bringing it back to the point off the top, it's like Kesselring we thought would inject a much needed element into this lineup when they traded for him. And he's still, still not skating. So it's not like he's coming back tomorrow. But when they get out there together, what's that going to look like compared to having, when everybody starts to slot back into their appropriate places, this can be a different team. I don't think anybody after the first 3 games was totally dismissing the injuries, that this is a better team when they are healthy. But you want to see a team that can stay afloat, because if you can't stay afloat when you get injuries, it won't matter when you get healthy because you'll already have dug a hole too deep. So an
that's
ongoing
right.
challenge for them. But yeah, Power with Kesselring, I'm looking forward to seeing it, because if Power can have a little bit more of that, and maybe he stands even taller when he's got Kesselring, who has that component to his game, the physicality, then you're right. I mean, that changes what the blue line looks like. It changes how they play. Maybe he can stand a little bit taller when he's got, some of those other guys sprinkled throughout the lineup. They're not the Florida Panthers the way they're assembled, obviously, but they do have more of that with Benson, you know, showing a little bit of that, Doan showing a little bit of that, and Kesselring's got that to his game. Danforth plays pretty heavy. He left the game, didn't return last night, but they need to play that way, and clearly the crowd wants to see it. So uh, the bar is low for Sabres fans. Like, as bad as it's been, they're like, just play
Just
hard.
show me that you care.
Just
Yeah.
play with passion and play hard. And they did that last night.
You mentioned Doan. He was the other player that I think we need to call out. It was hard to call out Josh Doan as a bright spot when we got together on Tuesday, just because the taste of being 0-3 was in everybody's mouth. But it's clear that when you just watch him play every shift, he's the guy going. The forechecking, the speed, the urgency to get to a spot, to beat a defender to the spot, the way that he'll use his body for position at in all areas of the ice in all different situations is notable. Good game last night statistically with the 3 assists. Gotta just call him out, I think, because when you can't talk about Benson at the top without following close behind and bringing up Josh Doan's effort. We talked about him when he was acquired. He was a dog. You and I talked about him early on before the trade was even made. And what were we saying? We're like, I don't know that that's a player that they want to give up. And then it kind of came out later after the trade. Some reporting was like, yeah, maybe there was a little bit of holdup with giving up Doan, not because his father was a franchise legend, because of what he means to the team. And I think Sabres fans are starting to see that now very early in the season. I want to hear your perspective, because you're around the team on a daily basis, at practice, in the room, you're down at the arena in the games. The impact of Josh Doan, just kind of tell us what you're seeing from your lens.
Yeah, on the ice, I think he's been their most consistent forward. It's only 4 games, but I feel like if he's not, he's one of their 3 best forwards every night so far. And, last night he wasn't one of the ones who scored, but I think you could make a case he was their best forward in the game. I mean, I love that they have him on the power play. Not even just for the net front, but he's just a smart hockey player. So, like, he's got some playmaking to his game. He's, like you said, eager to beat, players to the puck, right? Like, eager to win puck battles, but strong enough to consistently do it. And I did a story on him over the summer, so I talked to, people who know him, and I believe it was his college coach, maybe his strength coach, who said he's gonna, like, the more ice time he gets, like, as the game goes on, it's like he continues to rev up, and you see that, like, he doesn't wear down. He wears the other team down. Like, they get sick of getting shoved off the puck, and like you said, his body positioning is really good, but it's also his attitude. And I think his attitude is really important to this group in particular, because not just because he comes from the outside and, like, the 14 years and all that doesn't weigh on him the same because he's fresh and new to everything. I mean, this will test this aspect of his attitude, but everything I've heard from people who know him and also everything I've seen and experienced interacting with him, he has a relentlessly positive attitude. And his dad was the same way. His whole family, like, this is the Doan family when you talk to people. And I think that really matters in a room like this, in a situation like this. He's only 23 years old, but he is a leader in that way. And just a guy that comes to the rink with a smile on his face, not in a naive or immature way, in a constructive, trying to get things done way. We've talked about a lot that they need players who are drawn to fixing things, not guys who are, gonna be upset that they're in Buffalo, guys that are going to embrace the challenge. His dad told him when he got traded here, like, wow, that's awesome. What an opportunity, right? To wake up and revive a hockey hungry fan base. Like, this is awesome. Go wrap your arms around it. He's done that. Like, he is. And
it's incredible.
Yeah. Like, how many other people would have that reaction to being traded to Buffalo, right? Like, or how many other people, like, in an honest conversation with their family, would that be? But that's why he's wired that way. Like, he's Shane Doan's son, right? Shane Doan was that way in his career, loyal to a team, and in some dark times was trying to find ways out of it, trying to find ways to fix it, and committed to his franchise, to his community, to his teammates. Josh Doan is the same way, and it's only 4 games, but he's also a good hockey player. Like, I don't know exactly what the upside is scoring wise. I think it's there.
It's there.
I really do think it's there. But even if it's, 50 points, 40 to 50 points, like, everything else he brings defensively, forechecking, power play, it's what this lineup is sorely lacking. JJ Peterka had another goal last night, but the way Doan is playing, I don't think Sabres fans are missing him all that much.
No, it's hard to say Sabres fans are missing Peterka after they post 8 goals, right, in a game, which, God, it just seems like it's been a while.
Somebody tweeted me last night, and they're like, I'm going to start referring to this as the Doan trade. And I was like, fair enough. Fair enough.
That's nice to hear from the fan base in a way. I'm not here to be pom-poms for the Sabres. I think you know that. But it is nice to not, even for a day, to maybe just not be constantly sucked into that negativity vortex. Which, listen, you could argue if you watched the podcast on Tuesday that maybe we did not help the negativity vortex. We're not here to, like, be positive all the time. You know what I mean? But you have to acknowledge the bright spots. You have to acknowledge when they put forth the effort. And that's what we're doing here today. I still want to see more of it,
It's got to be more than one night.
It's got to be more than one night. And I think, I want to see better starts. It's the same things all the time that we talk about, the starts with this group. Why? But I don't want to go off on that tangent. It's still on my mind, apparently. It's pretty clear.
I mean, it just has to be, you have to see it more consistently to truly believe that the change is happening. And I think over the course of an 82-game season, we know they're going to have games like they have last night, right? We know that every team in the league is going to have those games. That's just the league over the course of 82 games. And we know the Sabres are capable of scoring goals. So, I mean, to score 8 goals when you scored 2 in your first 3 games, it's like the power play finally got going.
It's just about to go there. Yeah.
But, it's like, just like last season, I did have the thought last night, so much of this comes down to like the psychology of that locker room. And like you said on Tuesday, a lot of our focus was there. It was like, how are they going to respond to all of this? How are they tuning out the staff? For a night, at least, they didn't, right? You mentioned all the guys that were, either called out by Lindy or had one-on-one meetings with Lindy responded. So it's like, okay, let's see if that, you can stack some of those efforts together. But that was sort of the focus of what we were talking about. Could they respond to some of this adversity? Could they respond to the people leading them? And I think that's still going to be an ongoing conversation because the Senators are off to a pretty slow start themselves. They were without their captain, Brady Tkachuk. They were playing a backup goalie who had a bad night. So the defending champs are coming to town on Saturday for a 1:00 puck drop. They've got a ton of injuries of their own that they're dealing with, but they're still the Florida Panthers. Another test. And then you got the Canadians, who are just a high energy, exciting, fun young team that got to the playoffs last year, passed you by. And then you've got more division games. Detroit, 2 games against Toronto. Like, this is not going to be the solution, one game against the Senators, but they needed the weight off their shoulders. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and a player that needs some weight off his shoulders. We mentioned some of those guys that did respond to Lindy's message that they needed more out of. There's still one that's kind of sitting there, and I think that we got to talk about Kulich a little bit and kind of figure out. It's still early in the season. We know he's a capable player. I think he still has star potential in this league. Last night, empty netter, great. It counts. Jack Quinn had a shit ton of empty netters, didn't he, last year? Or at least, like he didn't score a goal on a goaltender.
McLeod had 5 of them.
Oh,
they, got him to 20 goals and got him a big fat contract.
So Kulich, though. So I was concerned that, Lindy could maybe go down this path of, we've seen him do this in the past. Vanek and some of these other young players, ride him a little hard at the beginning of their careers, bench him, scratch him, whatever. I would be concerned if he did that, played that card here with Kulich. I'm glad that he didn't last night, that Kulich got out there and played, moved around. The lines in this game were all over the damn place for various situations that we can kind of get into. But did Kulich do enough last night? Because Lindy said, I want to see what he does with this game.
He didn't do enough.
I don't think he did enough. Yeah,
he didn't
that's
have
kind
a
of
good
where I'm
game.
going.
I mentioned those 5-on-5 numbers from Tage Thompson. Yuri Kulich was right there with him because he played a decent amount with him. And I think the final tally at 5-on-5 for him was like a 9% expected goal share or somewhere in that neighborhood. Like, not great. But Lindy's tone after the game, and this is where it's on Lindy to handle this situation properly. His tone after the game was that he still wants to see more, that there's more there, and that he needs to grab hold of his confidence. And so that is where, every player is going to be different. They're not going to respond to everything the exact same way, which is actually why I, initially yesterday asked about Kulich. Ruff was like, I'm not revealing the lineup. So when I followed up, I just said, when you're dealing with a situation like Kulich or any other as a coach, like, how do you determine where to pick your spots? Because in a situation like this, you could probably point to 5 guys that you could yank out of the lineup and send a message to. And he went out of his way to say, well, first of all, he caved and he was like, if you want to know, he's playing. And I want to see, how he responds. But he said, this is not about Yuri Kulich. There's a lot of guys. And that's when he singled out some of the guys you mentioned. And within that, he said, Lindy himself did not have a meeting with Kulich, but he had Seth Appert sit down with him, which is probably smart. The history in Rochester, and Seth Appert's probably had a lot of these difficult conversations with Kulich because he was not the most consistent player in the AHL, despite, the point totals. And to your point about how you were worried about this, right? I think the reason you were worried is the same reason like I wrote about the other day is like they need him. You don't have Josh Norris. Like, if you really want to make a point with somebody, you better be careful because you don't have center depth even when he's in the lineup at this point. When McLeod's playing the way he did last night, you've got a little bit of it, but like you don't have a very strong center depth chart at the moment. So yanking out arguably your highest upside center. I mean, I know Tage Thompson's playing center right now, but like in an ideal world, they have him on the wing. It's a risky move because he's still so young, and if his confidence goes in the tank, like you need this guy going. You don't sending a message is tricky. So they started him on the wing on the fourth line. They moved him up. He was playing with Tage Thompson for a while, but yeah, he never got going in this game, and he did have a preseason injury. But Ruff hasn't mentioned the injury as an excuse for him at all. Like I think he would go out of his way to say like, yeah, he's battling through something. So if we're to assume he's healthy, like maybe it's just one of those things where he's got to get going, right? Like Ryan McLeod mentioned last night, he's like, I just didn't feel like I had my legs in the first few games. And, that can happen for various reasons, right? You pushed it too hard in camp, or maybe you didn't show up to camp the way you should have showed up. Like who knows exactly why that happens or why it's happening with Kulich, but they're going to need him. And the legs are what Lindy Ruff keeps mentioning with Kulich. It's like he's not skating the way that he did. He's not like carrying the puck out of the zone the way that he did. And this doesn't work. This lineup doesn't work without Kulich playing pretty well. He doesn't need to be a 70-point guy overnight, but he needs to get going for sure.
My hope was that Lindy was kind of toying with the idea of sitting him by giving him the lack of practice attention, right? Like you put him in the extra group, and maybe my thought was that should be enough to wake the kid up. You don't need to outright scratch him for the game because you do need him, but also send him the message in practice, see if he shows up in the game. Now I'm sitting here saying, okay, is he going to be in the game the next time the Sabres go out there? And because now it's interesting. Right? You lose Danforth. We don't know what the story is there. Did we get an update on Danforth as far as
just lower body? He didn't finish the game. So it's, we'll see. They have an off day today and they practice again on Friday. But when a guy doesn't finish the game, it's usually a little bit of a red flag. We'll see. Who knows? But yeah, that's one of the guys that's your sort of versatile, can play center, take those right side face-offs, was playing a lot with Krebs. So, I mean, Kozak's playing pretty well, but I don't think they want to put too many minutes on him. And so, yeah, they don't have a lot of room, a wiggle room at center.
Greenway's not going to be ready to be put in the lineup at a forward. Let's just forget center real quick, right? I think you don't want to put Geertsen back in. There is one scenario that if you want to sit Kulich, that might make sense in the grand scheme of things. Again, taking that long view. Is it a lever to pull for Lindy? I know we already said the window's closing. You know where I'm going with this when I say that. But the one exception that I would make, I think, to say, okay, if you're going to say Kulich, bring up one of those young guys to keep nipping at his heel. Hellenius, Oslin. I don't think it's the best move. I would still prefer that. Let the kid play his way out of it. Just because I think from the mindset of the player, Kulich's not a guy that you need to bench. I think he needs to go out there and just play and figure it out. But if you're going to bench him, and listen, Kulich should be worried about anybody taking his spot. He should be. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter if it's a 28-year-old guy or a 20-year-old guy. But I'll tell you what, if it's a 20-year-old guy or a 19-year-old guy that comes up and starts moving, kind of laying on his couch, mowing his lawn, you know what I mean? I kind of wonder if that's like enough to say, oh, holy shit, the light goes on for Kulich and it unlocks whatever's holding him back. I don't know. That's just a thought. But it doesn't sound like that's going to happen.
I think I did ask the other day about Oslin and Hellenius specifically because of this. I didn't throw Roseanne into that bucket because it's the center position is the problem. And Lindy Ruff said it's been discussed, but because Benson's coming back, because Greenway's coming back, like the window might be closing a little bit. And to an extent, I get it from a numbers game standpoint, but also those two guys are wingers. They're not helping out your center situation. And I think it's the competition aspect of it is worth pointing out. I think there has to be some element with Kulich because we've seen him run hot and cold. Like there had to have been some part of him that felt like he arrived a little bit last year, right? Like that's just psychology for a young kid, 20 years old, playing on the first line. He's got a lot of trust from Lindy Ruff, who everybody probably told him was this hard ass coach on young players. And he's thinking, well, I don't know. I'm on the first line. He seems to trust me okay. And so he probably had a little bit of that. I think anybody would naturally, but he needs to snap out of it one way or another because he certainly doesn't look like somebody who's arrived in these first 4 games. He's been really struggling. And, he wasn't outstanding in the playoffs for Rochester either. So that's sort of a continuation here. And Osland would be an interesting one. He's off to a good start in Rochester and was picked, 11 spots ahead of Kulich. And, kind of this guy that Kulich's been competing with already and certainly should be close to arriving, right? Like if Kulich is getting time as a number 1 center, it stands to reason one of his peers could be NHL ready pretty soon. And Hellenius, I think you can see, and in the preseason, he showed that he's probably more on the Kulich timeline, right? Where like he can get to the NHL a little bit quicker than probably Osland, just from an age standpoint because of the way he plays. He plays a different game. He forechecks hard. He's willing to hit. He's got confidence and some swagger. So I think it makes sense. Like I almost reflexively lean away from that sometimes because it feels like I know it's sort of the knee-jerk reaction from fans to just want to go to the next young guy, the
Well,
next
I wanted
shiny
to
new
go
toy.
there. Yeah.
But I
This
also
is a
think
unique
there's
situation, though.
there's logic to it here, and there's 2 players who maybe they're not ready to be full-time NHLers, but they could inject a spark offensively to a team that they had 8 goals last night. So for the time being, the offensive concerns, took a night off, but they still had 2 goals in their first 3 games and lost their number 1 center, who's a one-time 35 goal scorer. So I don't know that the scoring concerns are totally gone. And you have 2 players with creativity and skill that maybe they're ready.
The scoring concerns aren't gone. They had 27 shots on goal. 20 of them came in 1 period. I think those were the numbers, something like that. Okay. The concerns aren't gone. And in the big picture, when it comes to the young guys, I'm still in favor of philosophically suppressing the young guys a little bit, pushing them down, keep them hungry. But you got a lot of injuries right now. You have a player that you need to get going, and it's a short-term lever to pull, maybe. That's all I'm saying. Trust me, I agree. I'm not changing the philosophy. We had a conversation a couple weeks ago about why have they been rushing all these guys? Why have they been rushing all these guys? But at the same time, it's also part of a developmental plan. Bring a guy up for a couple games, give him a taste, send him back down. They could do that here, and it accomplishes multiple goals. Get Kulich going, get the player that you're trying to develop and some exposure, send him back. Something to consider. Again, I didn't like that Lindy said that window is closing. It might not, if Kulich doesn't go, that window might not be closed.
Well, and the reason I don't love the idea that the window is closing is you have 2 guys on your roster right now at forward who aren't helping your offense, right? Like Josh Dunn is not solving that problem. I like Josh Dunn. I like how he played in the preseason and how he's played, but he's not solving the problem offensively, I don't think. Mason Geertsen definitely isn't solving any of your problems offensively, and through 4 games isn't solving any problems. He skated in warm-ups last night. Do we think that had the Ottawa Senators like shaking in their boots? Like maybe Geertsen's going to play. I doubt it. He hasn't fought yet and hasn't been a notable physical presence. He only played 4 minutes each in the 2 games that he played. So it's like you do have room. If you sent those 2 guys down, Greenway comes back, you still got a spot, right? Now Luukkonen's going to come back, and you got to figure out the goalie situation, and so like there's going to be some roster gymnastics. But also, to your point, like Lindy said, the window is closing. Well, doesn't that mean you should maybe take a chance on it before it closes, right?
Yeah.
While you still have some of this flexibility with guys out, it would be sometimes that is the true motivator, right? We talked about this, a lot of times with the whole accountability when that was the word of the summer a couple summers ago. It's like the accountability happens when there's somebody there to take your job, when there's somebody there that can truly push you. We've seen that with Luukkonen at times, when Levi comes up. And now, kind of a side conversation here, but somebody has taken Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's job, I think. Alex Lyon, this is his net right now. Rasmus Dahlin gave him the sword last night. It looked like he was going to impale someone with it. If you saw the video that they posted after the game, he's swinging it around and looked like a pirate. But they gave him that, I think, because they realized, not because last night was his best game. I thought he played pretty well, made some good saves early when they were getting outshot heavily, but also because they recognized that in the first 3 games, he probably deserved a win somewhere.
And it could have been a lot of worse for the team.
Those scores could have looked a lot uglier.
Yes,
and
that's right.
Psychologically, that would have been challenging, I think, and would have, been even worse for the piling on that's been happening with this team. So I think it is very much Alex Lyon's net, just knowing Lindy Ruff and the way he likes to ride the hot hand. He's played him in every game. 4 games in 7 days, he's played him every game. So that's probably my concern, is that Lindy Ruff also has a tendency to kind of ride a goalie into the ground a little bit. But I don't think Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is just going to walk back into the same workload he had early last season. I think this is going to be much more, at best, for Luukkonen 50-50. And I think he's going to have to earn it back, or Lyon's going to have to give it up. And that was a major question I had coming into the season, but Lyon has answered it early. Has to keep it going, but he's looked steady, and the veteran poise, reading the game, like it's all been there. So it's a tangent, I know, from your point about the kids coming up from Rochester, but when we're talking about internal competition, Lyon has created some for Luukkonen.
Hey, listen, that's a great situation for the Sabres to be in. They don't need to rush Luukkonen back. It's a great situation for Luukkonen if he has the maturity to see it, that he doesn't have to rush himself back to try to come in and save the day. And no, I think it's great. And I'm all, how I feel about creating competition internally at every position, every level, all the time. So no, he's the bright spot with Doan and now Benson. Those are the 3 stars of the first 4 games of the season, in my opinion, for the Sabres. And I don't think there was any debating. There really shouldn't be. 2 other quick notes or questions for you before we get out of here this morning, because it's getting to be time. Ryan Johnson, he only played a couple minutes last night, 9 shifts, a little over 5 minutes, or just under 6. Eye test for me, pace, again, that urgency, getting pucks out of the zone. I think he belongs. I don't know why he didn't play as much as he did last night. Something to monitor. Do you have a thought on Johnson?
I'm with you that I thought he was playing well, but only 5 minutes when Jacob Bryson got 10 tells you where he stands. I mean, Johnson's the one who took the penalty in front of the net, right? Hauling a guy down. But Bryson took a penalty flipping the puck into the stands. So it's like, I'd rather have the one with the guy, doing his job in front of the net than the guy putting the puck, giving everybody a souvenir. This is going to be an ongoing thing, I think, is where Johnson, because of his situation where he doesn't need waivers, and because Bryson's more experienced, that Johnson's going to have to really go above and beyond to beat him out. And he, I think, has played pretty well, but he probably hasn't made it such a no-doubter that they're willing to put Bryson on waivers. So I think if they get, when they get to a situation where everyone's healthy, it's probably Johnson who's going to be playing for the Amherst.
Fair enough, and I don't disagree. Guys can go down sometimes because they can, and that's kind of exactly where Johnson is. We're talking about contractually. Lastly, before we wrap up, Dylan Cousins made his return to Buffalo last night. Do you think there was any juice there from the Sabres to maybe go a little bit extra with the energy and the effort to get a win in Dylan Cousins' return with the Ottawa Senators?
There could be. I mean, whatever works, right? Like, I think,
yeah, whatever motivator you can throw on the board. I just wondering if you felt anything, heard anything, saw anything.
not a tremendous amount of direct evidence on that, but look, the conversation was certainly going to be, it had the potential to become, look, the Sabres lost another trade. If he scored a couple goals and if he, and let's not forget, like, this was a guy that called the team out as soft a couple years ago. A lot of those guys are still in the room. I don't know if what else, was said behind the scenes, if he was saying that publicly. He wasn't wrong, by the way, but he did have a tendency to speak his mind. And so, yeah, I'm sure there was, look, this guy got to play in the playoffs last year. He's, he's probably thinking pretty highly of himself right now, feeling good about getting out of this situation in Buffalo. And if that played a role, then good, because they should have some pride in a situation like that. They should not want those guys to come into the building and walk all over them. And unlike Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart, who are not only superstars, but don't have as much connection to the current group of players like Cousins does.
Yep.
Cousins was supposed to be part of this core, supposed to be part of
had a letter,
the group that changed things. Yeah, had a letter. Yeah, I mean, this had a letter and the contract to go with it, right? And he let them down in a lot of ways. I think let down the guys in the room, the way he played, and the way he led, probably at times too. So if that played a role, then good on him, because I think fans are sick of seeing former Sabres come into the building and walk all over this team and make the team the topic of conversation nationally the next day about all their failed trades. Because have they won that trade? No. Like, obviously, Josh Norris is out for 2 months, and Jacob Bernard-Docker's out of town, so not looking great. But have the Senator, his Cousins. What's Cousins going to become? It's still going to be interesting to track, but they didn't let him get the upper hand last night.
One assist,
-3, I think, right?
1 assist, -3, team high 5 shots on goal, and won just over 69% of its draws for Ottawa in an 8-4 loss to the Sabres. So that's where we're going to end it today, Matthew. Another little coffee with Matt edition here, the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show. I'm liking these early shows again. I'm just going to keep kind of pinging you. Say, hey, you want to go in the morning?
We just need we need a local coffee shop to get on board and sponsor the show. The coffee with Kris, the Wake and Bakes.
That's right. There you go.
Hour. And look, late night last night with the game, so the turnaround, I was curious to see how it would go, but this just wakes me up in the morning. And we didn't even get into Alex Tuch, which we thought we would get to, but I think that's good. I think it's good to put a pin in, because I've got a story coming, first of all. So then
do your plugs.
We can talk about. Yeah, I've got a story coming on Tuch that we can. I had a conversation with him in the morning yesterday before the game on Wednesday, and I think we can put a pin in it, because it's it's going to be an ongoing. It's an evergreen conversation until he signs a contract. But, they win a game and the feelings are good. Nobody's last night saying Alex Tuch is looking for the first ticket out of town. He looked like he had a hell of a time, and had a good conversation with him that he's been pretty level-headed about this whole thing. He's not riding the same roller coaster that the fans on. So that story will be coming. I have a post-game story from last night that went live as we were recording this here, so people can check that out. And always find everything at theathletic.com/sabres. Like this video so that Kris doesn't get cranky, and jump into the comment section. The comment section was lively. It's almost like the chat migrated to the comment section, which is good for the algorithm. So we like that. Keep that going.
Likes are good for the algorithm. Comments are good for the algorithm. But your viewing, which we always appreciate, is also very good for the algorithm. Sabres back in action Saturday, 1 o'clock start. Matthew will be feverishly covering all the action of the Sabres as they take on the Panthers. And you never know. Maybe we'll be back for a live show very soon. Hit that notification bell so you know when that does happen. For Matthew Fairburn, you can find everything that Matthew does at theathletic.com/sabres. For the production crew, who is not used to me sitting with this ring light so early in the morning, but here we are. I'm Kris Baker. Thanks, everyone, again, for watching the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show. We'll see you again very soon.